If you can't tell by looking at me with my devilish looks and my award-winning charm, I'm not an NFL GM. Nope, not even close to it. In fact, I would say 95% of the things that GMs do, I disagree with, but we do see eye to eye on one thing. Initial draft grades, absolutely stupid. They're the dumbest thing possible because you have no idea what's going to transpire over the next 4 years. You don't know if Mr. Irrelevant is going to be pretty damn relevant. Hi, Brock Purdy, would you like your award? We don't know if the high-profile first-round pick is going to crash and burn under the pressure or live up to expectations. And we don't know what those mid-round selections are. I feel the same way about winners and losers in the transfer portal. Yeah, you on paper got better, but if the players don't produce, it really is a moot point. But with that in mind, I figured let's go through and see some of the high-profile names that either departed or entered an SEC school and might be the reason why that team is able to go ahead and claim not only a spot in Atlanta, but maybe even the college football playoff. But what's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Thanks so much for watching this video. Go ahead and hit subscribe while you're at it. Rate, review, leave a thumbs up. Tell us your thoughts on which transfer portal player at your university is the best fit for your team. And make sure that you're following along with us every single day because we're talking college football about the #1 conference every single afternoon leading up to week 1 and well into 2024. Make sure that you're following us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We got you covered 24/7 at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Check us out over at Texas Sports Unfiltered too. We got a partnership going on with them. And for your #1 content surrounding your favorite conference, make sure that you visit SECUnfiltered.com. Top SEC transfers following the second portal wave. There have been some names. There have been some high-profile names. Some that recently have joined forces with SEC schools that might change the enigma and persona around the program now going into 2024, where a loss maybe is a win maybe is a loss, maybe a game that you thought was going to be a blowout is a lot closer. Regardless, things still have to happen between now and week 1. Things definitely have to happen where you see consistency, but I do think that these transfer names are certainly playmakers that could pose a threat to getting these teams into the dozen dance. Let's start off with Ole Miss, Juice Wells. Most people know at this point I am very high on Ole Miss. I would say that if there is a leader of the band, of the Boy Scout Club, of really anything with Lane Kiffin, it would be yours truly. They're America's team in my book because much like America, you have to find somebody to root for, and Ole Miss just feels like it's finally their time. They've proven that they can hang around with the big guns. They've proven that they can work the transfer portal. You've seen improvements, and they got an award-winning coach who has excellent bourgeoisie charm. How do you not want to see Lane Kiffin in a college football playoff? What'd you do? You went out and you fortified your defensive line. Walter Nolan, Chris Paul. You also brought over Princely Uwin-Manley-Yellen from Florida. But one thing that really stood out about this passing attack last year was the ability to have multiple weapons, not just Trey Harris, not just Caden Proctor, not just Jordan Watkins, but also Dayton Wade. You lose Wade. He wants to go play in the NFL. More power to him. I'm not going to hold you back, but you had to fortify that middle of the ground. You get that with the guy in Juice Wells, who can be that slot receiver. He can win at the point of an attack. He's good as a route runner in the open field. He does a good job creating separation, and he can play a complementary role where also he can take over games. One thing that is not brought up enough is it's always great to know you have a #1 receiver. But what's even better is when you have a playmaker who could be a #1 receiver that's just cascading himself as a #2. Texas had it last year with Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. You could certainly say Georgia had it at times with both Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. You can easily say that it happened at Washington. So why would you not want that down on the Grove? Now you have 4 weapons instead of 3. Plus, when you look at the backfield with Jackson Dart and whoever is your lead running back, there's not many questions going on the Grove. In fact, the only one is, do we finish 10-2 and fall short of going to Atlanta, but still have a shot at going to the playoff? Or do we go 11-1 and have to actually start planning on what Atlanta weather's like in December? One that recently happened, Auburn's KeAndre Lambert Smith. Can anybody tell me the last time that Auburn had a 1,000-yard receiver? I'll save you the trouble. It hasn't happened in this century. 1999 was the last time the Plains featured a 1K marker attached to a wide receiver's name. And since then, they've gone on to play in 2 national championships, one of which they won, one of which they had the highlight play of all of college football history. And the other one, they just figured out a way to just get past Bama. Like, that's amazing. And they haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver. And I'm not saying that KeAndre Lambert-Smith won't be a 1,000-yard receiver. He may end up falling flat, not getting the same criteria, similar to what happened at State College with Penn State. But what could happen is adding in a veteran name like KLS, adding in a playmaker who can work the middle of the field and force defensive backs to have to not play double teams or have to be more so in press man coverage. It opens up the field for another wide receiver. Ever heard of Cam Coleman? Yeah, number 8 is the number 1 target on the Plains right now. And everyone and their mother knows that he is about ready to take names and kick ass for the next 3 years, so long as there's a complimentary piece. And the biggest thing is that if you're not going to go ahead and move off of a guy in Peyton Thorne as your quarterback, you might as well surround him with as much talent as humanly possible. And teams that are really good, teams that actually can be a legit threat, have that second wind. They have that trump card. Yeah, we know Auburn loves to run the football. It's very clear that if they were to go get a Caden Salter, quarterback that Hugh Freeze knew very well, they were going to have a mobile aspect in their backfield. But let's just say that you're going up against a really good run defense, but an average pass defense. Now you got weapons. 2 really good ones. KeAndre Lambert-Smith last year was the leading target for the Nittany Lions. I think he can be the leading target down for the other set of Tigers. How funny that these two played against each other. Now they're playing for the respect of which wide receiver ends up claiming their school in the long run. KeAndre Lambert-Smith absolutely can be a difference maker, not just in terms of him as a route runner, receiver, pass catcher in the open space, but also, how about just the fact that he's going to open up plays for Cam Coleman? And I think that most Auburn fans would appreciate that more so than his own statistic line at the end of the day. Alabama, yeah, you get back Kaden Proctor. That's just a win. Kaden Proctor is the biggest winner of all this offseason in any single sport. And I say that with a sense of salt. I mean, with a grain of salt. But I also mean what I say. The man went back home, got to hang out with his family, got to be around people that missed him, got to watch Caitlin Clark absolutely make history, beating Maravich's record, go on to have a successful career throughout her entire tenure, become the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA draft, bring in a highlight countless eyeballs nonstop. Oh, and then as soon as he's done with that, Kaden Proctor goes back to Alabama, says, hey, Kalen DeBoer, can I be your left tackle of the future? Sure, son. Welcome back to T-Town. We need another title. You're our left tackle. It's a sense of proof of concept, people. A guy like Kaden Proctor was showing growth by the season's end. You saw the potential of what he can be. And you know for a fact that with another year underneath his belt, he's only going to improve. And this isn't the same Alabama of old. It's no longer Nick Saban and company. It's now Kalen DeBoer's team. And Kalen DeBoer brought over a very highly successful offensive line coach who recently picked up a high-profile award. You may have heard of it. It's the Joe Moore Award. It goes out to the best offensive line in the country. So any fault or feeble mistake that you feel is alongside a Kaden Proctor, that might be out the window by week 2. And at that point, now your question is, oh, Alabama didn't retool. They just regrouped. And now here we are once again talking about the Tide's terror, continuing to reign on in Titletown, well past the heir apparent of Nick Saban. How about Texas A&M? Nick Scorton. Here's the thing about Mike Elko. He's like a grandmother when it comes to defensive linemen. Like, you as a parent know that you trust your parents to take care of your children. 9 times out of 10, unless that you've seen something heinous in the past, and yes, we have heard those stories, you trust them to make sure that your kids are perfectly safe and having a good time. I trust Mike Elko like I would trust my own parents with my child, my unborn that is an existing child. But still, the way that he works with defensive linemen is second to none. And he honestly gets the best version out of them. It's why A&M has had such a successful hit rate when it comes to getting defensive tackles, defensive ends to the professional level. And Nick Scorton is still learning how to play defensive end. He was a defensive outside pass rusher at Purdue, in Bryant College Station at Bryant High in Bryant, Texas. And by the way, I know people have called me out for this one, at Bryant, Texas. Bryant, Texas. Scorton was an outside linebacker, and now he's playing with his hand in the dirt. And how did he look in that spring game? Well, if you didn't pay attention, 6 tackles, 3.5 tackles for losses, 2.5 sacks, probably more. But again, want to make sure that Connor Wegman got the ball off in time. Very hard to imagine this not getting better, this not improving as his rep count improves, as he feels more comfortable with his hand in the dirt instead of playing in a 2-point stance. And then you remember he plays Notre Dame. Notre Dame doesn't have either tackle returning. Blake Fisher went pro. Joe Alt went top 5. And Riley Leonard's going to be sitting in that backfield wondering, how the hell am I supposed to get past this 245-pound massive behemoth of a man that runs like an outside linebacker and hits like a defensive end. There is a legit shot that Nick Scorton can be the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He could be a first-round draft pick. He could end up being somebody that we all overslept, forgot about, and then slowly but surely he rises from the ashes and becomes something of a household figure in the SEC. You ever heard the story of the ugly duckling when that one duck just couldn't end up being well-liked by anybody and then turns into a beautiful swan? Yeah, that's Nick Scorton. Wasn't able to get recruited by an SEC school, goes, wins a Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year honor, and then ends up doing the exact same thing in the SEC. Don't be shocked when Scorton leads the conference and not only tackles for losses, but also potentially sacks. Texas Bill Norton. This is one that is going to draw in a lot of buzz and for good reason. The thing that made Texas so great was not Quinn Ewers. It was not just the passing attack. It was not having two great running backs to replace the production lost by Jonathan Brooks with the torn ACL. It was their defensive front seven, and it was mainly their defensive line. Good God, if you could actually find a way to duplicate what T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy did, complementing each other, one with physicality and one with finesse, you would be locked and loaded for probably the next decade in Austin. And they have talent. They have a egregious amount of talent coming back to Austin next year. But the name that really struck the most interest for me is the 6'6", 348-pound defensive tackle that just left Arizona and is reuniting with Johnny Nason, the new linebackers coach for the Longhorns. Yeah, that's your T'Vondre Sweat replacement. You might not get a slippery, shifty playmaker like a Byron Murphy, but you will get that physical front seven, and that's because of Bill Norton just pile driving past people. And you want to set the tone in the SEC? We know that your offense is good. We know that the Longhorns are going to boot, scoot, and boogie like Brooks and Dunn into the end zone for 6 on the daily. You need to be able to have a great defensive front to overpower these linemen, overpower SEC front sevens, overpower the trenches. And Bill Norton was the main reason why the Wildcats went rampant in the Pac-12 to close out a promising era underneath Jed Fish and underneath an entire conference, because he's just bigger than you. And he uses that strength and picks you up and places you down and goes, you stay out of my way. I don't want to hurt you, and goes and kills your quarterback. That's what's coming to the 40 acres. And there are going to be 40 shades of fear in all forces that are coming into Austin come Saturdays this fall, because Bill Norton, he can be that guy. He is that talented, and he has that much potential to come in right away and be an enforcer, even without a lot of practice underneath Pete Kwiatkowski's belt. You know what you don't need to practice? Anytime that you want to make bets, but it doesn't help when you go ahead and have some practice. So go ahead and use Prize Picks. If you haven't heard of Prize Picks, number one, what are you doing with your life? And number two, let me tell you a little bit about them. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members, and it is the easiest and most exciting way to get in the action while you still get to watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick 2 or more or less than 2 player stats and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100,000 times your money on Prize Picks with as simple as 4 correct selections. Turn $10 into $1,000 with baseball, hockey, college basketball. The NBA postseason is right around the corner, and you know that college baseball is going to be coming up very soon. So why not go ahead and get involved in the action? Win yourself a little bit of cash for the summer. You want to look good. You want to feel good with our other promos. So why don't you also feel good by putting a little bit more of that green aside for the summer months? To do so, go visit prizepicks.com. Download the Prize Pick app today. Use the promo code SECU for a first deposit match up to $1,000. That's promo code SECU to redeem your very first deposit match today. Pick more, pick less. That's easy with our friends at Prize Picks. And by the way, you know that you want to go ahead and bet on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Who doesn't want to go ahead and see Nashville run it all the way back for a shot of potentially hoisting up a title? Let's go talk about Marcus Bryant, another recent name that joined forces with Missouri over the last few weeks. One thing that worried me about the Tigers actually had nothing to do with the defense. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off from what you lost in Blake Baker to Corey Batoon. I don't think anybody is going to try and sugarcoat that. But the offensive line lost 3 starters, and it lost both of its tackles. Well, you went out and you added in Caden Green, and he's going to be your right tackle. Well, now you get Marcus Bryant, who's basically been a 3-year starter in the AAC, and Corey Batoon has seen him before with SMU. And so now you just rebuilt your offensive line with 2 players who have starting experience in other conferences, but still starting experience. with a veteran supporting cast in the personnel department at quarterback, at running back, at wide receiver, on defense. So the wash, rinse, repeat method, and I hear Missouri fans actually watching these videos and getting very excited, and then I hear the outside noise. They're just word vomit, just disgusting. We all know that feeling where they're saying, oh, Missouri's going to regress. How? How? I implore you to tell me how this team is taking a step backwards when all they did was they brought in proven experience. And Marcus Bryant, who probably was going to be a part of an SMU squad that could compete for an ACC title, is now going to be competing for an SEC title. 20 plus starts underneath his belt for the Mustangs over the last 2.5 years. He's always been a left tackle. He's probably going to be your blindside protector for Brady Cook. I'm excited to see what shows up in Columbia in 2024. And I don't think it's going to be that many losses. CJ Daniels for LSU. I love this fit because I loved watching Daniels play 2 years ago. And probably people are saying, well, Cole, why'd you love him 2 years ago? Well, I like Group of 5 football. I've always loved Group of 5 football. In fact, I am somebody that embraces the Group of 5 probably more than most, which is why I completely understand the prominence of having its own playoff. But CJ Daniels was a household name for Liberty back in 2022. And what did he do? He said, nope, I'm not okay with just being a household name in Conference USA. I want literally everyone to know about me. So I'm going to go off for 1,000 yards, win at every point of attack, and prove that I can be a number one receiver for a more prominent school. Welcome to the prominent school. The yellow and purple are ready to welcome you, and you are ready to pounce your way, hopefully, to helping LSU make it to the college football playoff. He can be a 1,000-yard receiver, but he doesn't have to be the only piece, which is why I really like this fit. You have Kyron Lacey. You brought over Xavier Thomas from Mississippi State. You basically took your 3 receivers and turned it in from a tremendous trio into now a terrific trio. And maybe they could end up being tremendous, tremendous, whatever the hell it is. Either way, CJ Daniels only adds that next element. And by the way, the kid's got wheels. He can fly down the field. You know who's going to be throwing it 50 yards down the field on the regular? I can give you a hint. His name, your new starting quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. Tennessee, I could have gone a whole bunch of ways with this one, but I think Holden States is a really interesting player. Only had 15 catches last year with Notre Dame. Only had 178 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. So basically, 25% of his production, and it was 6 points. And this was in an offense that was catered toward the run. And now it's not. You do realize what Tennessee's offense is. It is a Frankenstein monster that literally has puked up its own enigma and has no recollection of slowing down anytime soon. They can run it, they can pass it, they can go high tempo, they can go slow tempo. And the biggest thing that when you hear about Stays right now, he's just got to get used to that. But he knows how to run block. And he's proven he can be a big-time threat in the red zone. And now you have Brew McCoy, and you bring over Chris Brazzell from Tulane. And you still have some young receivers. And even though you don't have any more Jabari Small or Jalen Wright, you have Dylan Sampson, you feel decent about your running back room. You can just do whatever you want. Like Josh Heupel's offense at this point is basically a white blank board. That's what it is. It is a blank canvas. And Nico Iamaleava is about ready to make a masterpiece in Knoxville that will be hung in the rafters for years on end if he can lead his team to the college football playoff. Having as many weapons as possible is a good start. And Holden Stays, yeah, he's going to be staying as a fixture in Neyland Stadium for many games this upcoming fall. How about another tight end? Ben Yasserk. I'm not sure how many Georgia fans have heard of this guy. Let me give you a quick lowdown. Last year, I compared Adonai Mitchell going to Texas as a reason to become a first-round pick. Why? Because of Steve Sarkisian's offense knows how to get wide receivers onto day one. Did it with Devonta Smith, did it with Jerry Jeudy, did it with Henry Ruggs, did it with Xavier Worthy. Well, the same thing could be said about this offense headlined by Mike Bobo when it comes to tight ends. They know what they're doing at the position. And Ben Yasserk is a guy that can come in right away, and he's not going to be Brock Bowers 2.0, but good God, is this a great replacement. Last season, over 13.5 yards per catch in an anemic offense by the Cardinal. They had no passing attack. They were dreadful when it came to run blocking outside of Yasserk. And so now you're bringing in a guy that doesn't have to be a number one receiver, but can be your best option in the red zone, can block, can add a second element at the second level of the field, can win at every level of the field with his route running, pretty decent hands, good overall speed. Basically, Alabama used to do this all the time, where instead of going to the transfer portal, they would just raise the kid that was sitting behind the starter, and immediately you would see the results basically come into fruition. Well, Georgia's doing the same thing. It's just called the transfer portal, and they're getting the players that are going to come right in and basically pick up the pieces and not miss that much of a beat. There's a reason why the Bulldogs are the favorites in the SEC, and a guy like Yasserk is going to be a favorite to be one of the best tight ends in the country, if not the top tight end in next year's NFL draft. Florida, Shamir DK. There's something about having a great relationship with the wide receiver that is either expanded upon or just forgotten about. And I think DK said, I don't have a great quarterback right now in Madison. I have a great quarterback, and he lives right now in Gainesville, and they need a number one wide receiver or at least a number two now that Ricky Pearsall's gone. Yeah, watch, rinse, repeat. Florida has the schedule that basically was created by college football Satan himself because if he has this evil vendetta against Billy Napier. He has his pitchfork waiting and prodding and hoping that he gets to meet him one day at the Hell's Gates. But Billy Napier is going to do everything possible to turn Florida around this year. The best way to do so, have more than one simple issue at wide receiver. You have Eugene Wilson. Trey's going to go off this year. He's going to terrorize SEC teams. If you took anything away from the spring game, his route running has gotten better. His fluidity has gotten better. His footwork has continued to take that next step forward. The thing that you worry about whenever you talk about a team like Florida is their defense, and mainly their defense and their special teams, but also who's your number two? DK can be that number two receiver. And he already knows what kind of relationship you need to have with a quarterback because he played with Graham Mertz for 2 years at Wisconsin. So it's a good fit, not because if he's going to be a plug and play addition to this offense that replaces Pearsall, but it's a good fit because the quarterback doesn't have to build a relationship. He's already got one locked in. Like I've been talking with people in Houston because I covered the Texans about CJ Stroud and Cade Stover. And I said, don't be shocked if Stover has number one numbers next year at tight end. That's stupid. He was a 4th round pick. Yeah, but relationships matter, people. And a relationship between DK and Mertz that translated into somewhat productivity for the Badgers is blooming down in Gainesville. And now you have that at your disposal. What more are you missing? I think this is a really good fit offensively, but I think it's a better fit in terms of having sustainability for Graham Mertz going into a pivotal year. And for Billy Napier, you best hope that this is a year that ends up with triumph instead of tragedy, because right now you already have 2 feet out the door. You don't want your head following and rolling right behind it. Make sure that you like and comment down below. Who is your favorite transfer so far via the portal? Which schools do you think have done enough via the portal this offseason to really take that next jump into the contention status? Make sure that you also hit subscribe, rate, and review the video down below, and keep up with us every single day here on SEC Unfiltered, because we're talking SEC ball every single moment leading up to week 1 and well past it. Download the podcast version of the show, and while you're there, rate, review, subscribe, and also leave your comments, thoughts, and general opinions about what you want to see from this show moving forward. Make sure that you're also following us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Mr. Cole Thompson, at SEC Unfiltered. And for the number one content surrounding your favorite sport, make sure you visit SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, SEC fans, later.